We are Aldea, a spiritual community for people of all kinds of faith backgrounds, or those who don't have any experience with spirituality or religion. And what connects us are values like love and open-mindedness, rather than doctrine or dogma. Our ability to create this inclusive and welcoming space is made possible through donations from people just like you. So whether you join us regularly in person or you tune into our messages from all over the place, if you enjoy what we're up to, we would so appreciate it if you'd consider giving to Aldea, whether it's a one-time gift or setting up a recurring donation. You can find more information on how to give in the description of today's episode. Thanks again for joining us, and we hope you enjoy today's message.
Thank you. Yep, Sylvia and I was just thinking this morning, when I met Sylvia 27 years ago, when I first ventured into Aldea, which we'll be talking about today. And I had the pleasure of having her work with me for over 11 years, and she's really smart, and she made me look really good all the time. All right. So, I started attending Aldea at the time, Community Church of the Foothills, back in 1996. So I've been here a very long time. I've been on the leadership team for a really long time. There's about 10 of us, I think, on the leadership team. If you go to our website, aldeaspiritualcommunity.org, you will see who the leadership team members are. Check us out. And it's just good to know who we are, because we're good people to come talk to when you have questions or an idea that you may have for Aldea. So what is the leadership team? I just kind of wanted to start off with telling you what is the leadership team. We're really like the board of directors of Aldea. And we meet once a month. And we oversee certain things. We oversee the fiscal, how we're doing fiscally. We have a budget every year that we approve, and we monitor that throughout the year. We're responsible for hiring and holding accountable our senior pastor. We do not get involved in the day-to-day operations of Aldea, even though we may volunteer for various things. But we are responsible for what we call the ends of Aldea. And that's really the statements about who we are and what we stand for. We're in the process of tweaking those ends right now, so hopefully in the not too distant future we can share those with you. We are on the leadership team for a 3-year term, and then we can renew for another 3 years. And then we're required to take a year off, a sabbatical. And then if we're invited to come back, we can start the process all over again. So some of us have been on the leadership team for a really long time, and we need some new blood, so to speak. So in the fall, we start looking at membership for the leadership team. So I would just say, if you have an interest or questions about the leadership team, please reach out to myself or Jake or anybody else on the leadership team. We'd be happy to talk to you about it. So over the past few weeks, we've been talking about the hero's journey. Jake has done a great series, and he's kind of taken us through the cycle of the hero's journey. And while he was doing that, I couldn't help but think about Aldea's journey and the many heroes that we've had here at Aldea. So when he asked me to speak today, I knew exactly what I wanted to talk about, what I wanted to share about this hero's journey of Aldea. All right. Go the right way? Am I going the wrong way? Sorry, I'm a novice. There we go. So the status quo. This is the point where we begin our story. This is when Aldea, the beginning point of when Aldea was birthed. Aldea grew out of a traditional evangelical church. It actually started in somebody's living room in the early 1970s. And then eventually they grew and they went into a school for a period of time. And then they bought some property on Ina Road, right across from Westward Look, and several acres. And they built 2 buildings initially. One that was a worship center that held about 100 to 125 people. And then the other building had some offices and a classroom. At that time, it was called Community Church of the Foothills. And this is when our first and most prominent hero enters the scene, so to speak. Let's see. Oh, wrong way again. Kevin Skinner. You may recognize the person that's with him, Sylvia. So in 1994, Kevin was asked to come to Community Church of the Foothills as an interim pastor. And him and Sylvia and their 3 children, David, Matthew, and Michael, came, and he was quickly offered the position as senior pastor at Community Church of the Foothills. While it did not advertise its Baptist affiliation, it was part of the Baptist General Conference. And though it was evangelical, it was really a friendly, seeker-friendly approach. And by that, I mean that they just kind of had contemporary services, and they tried to appeal to people who had either never come to church or people who had become disenchanted with the traditional church background. So there was really nothing traditional about Community Church of the Foothills. There were no wooden pews, there were no hymnals, there were no choir robes. There were messages that were Bible-based, but they were really made to be relevant to modern life. I started attending CCF in 1996, along with my husband Art and my children Tyler and Austin. I had grown up in an evangelical Baptist church, but I had been away from the church for many years, and I really felt a need to return to church to benefit my children. I really wanted them to learn about Jesus. I got involved, as Sylvia mentioned, in the children's ministry. I taught Sunday school, and I got on the leadership team of the children's ministry. And a cute story I like to tell is that's where my children kind of saw me at work, was at church. So my younger son, Austin, used to get really bad ear infections. And we were at the ear doctor, and the doctor asked me what I did for a living. And before I could blurt out that I was a full-time attorney, thank you very much, Austin blurted out, she works at our church. So I like that. In 1999, Kevin asked me to join the leadership team of Community Church of the Foothills overall. And that's the first time that I realized there might be some trouble in paradise. I'm sure Sylvia remembers us at the leadership team meeting to affirm myself and another woman onto the leadership team. A few members of the congregation got up and voiced their dissatisfaction with having women in leadership at church. Kevin did not back down, and we were both voted on to the leadership team. CCF thrived for quite some time. We had over 600 people. We had 5 full-time pastors. We had an administrative staff. Sylvia was part of that staff at one time. Kim Bingham, that many of you know, she was part of that administrative staff for a long time. In 2000, we held a capital campaign, and we raised the money to build a new worship center that housed 750 people, and we ended up having to go to 2 services. And we had multiple events during the week for people of all ages. All right, let's go to our next slide. So our call to adventure. I call these years the calm before the storm. We had many good years at CCF. And in 2003 or 2004, sometime along in there started to be a shift at CCF. Kevin had a stirring for a new way. And to me, this quote really signifies that. When we least expect it, life sets us a challenge to test our courage and willingness to change. At such a moment, there is no point in pretending that nothing has happened or in saying that we are not yet ready. The challenge will not wait. Life does not look back. Paulo Coelho. There is no waiting and no turning back for this challenge. Kevin and the leadership team started wrestling with the direction of CCF and the conservative evangelical theology on which it was based. A vision emerged. It was a vision to create a community that was not only warm, relevant, and inviting, but also one that was truly inclusive. A community where people who had been marginalized felt included and there was no agenda to change them. It was a slow process, and the word that comes to mind during this process was adversity. We had adversity to change. We had adversity to being inclusive. We had adversity from going away from the status quo. The leadership team during this time was struggling with its role and its path in this change. I cannot speak for Kevin and Sylvia, but I can tell you that there were many issues of feeling unsupported. There was a lot of hurt. There was a lot of pain. There was a lot of tears. It was around this time that our next prominent hero emerged, Dr. Dave Fleming. When the hero is ready, the mentor appears. Will Craig. There was another church in town that was undergoing some issues with leadership, and we kind of heard through the grapevine that there was a consultant that was helping them, and so the leadership team at that time decided to contact this consultant and ask him if he'd be willing to help us. We contacted Dr. Dave, as we came to call him, and it was great. He was the perfect mentor at the perfect time. He offered Kevin support. They became fast friends, which they remain to this day. He really was a mentor at a critical time. With Dave's guidance and leadership, the leadership team learned proper governance techniques, and Kevin's vision for a new path forward was able to emerge. During this period of time, I became chairperson of the leadership team. Many of the leadership team did not survive this change. I was 100% on board. I was able to embrace this shift because I was really secretly struggling with evangelical views. That's why I had been away from the church for so many years. I had no problem with the concept of a loving God, but I had issues with exclusivity and with a God that was more interested in punishing me than loving me. So when we started down a path of a God of love, period, and a community of love, period, I was completely on board. In 2006, Aldea Spiritual Community was birthed. CCF traded in a long list of tightly held and often never questioned beliefs for a simple mantra, love, period. We were grounded in one simple belief. We lived our lives in the way of Jesus and held love as our highest value. People in the community were urged to hold beliefs regarding their faith, but to hold them as loosely as they felt comfortable with in order to allow themselves to be shaped by the faith and the belief of others in the community. Questions were always welcome, as well as people of all faiths or no faith at all. We were going from the known to the unknown. We were taking a leap of faith and leaving the illusion of who we were towards a path of who we wanted to become. This new trial, there were many trials along this way. The new vision was not widely embraced. During this period of time, we had open houses that we called Lunch with Kevin and Dave. And during these lunches, they would talk about the concepts of love period, about inclusivity. There was a mass exodus at CCF, and we jokingly would call these lunches with Kevin and Dave their attempt to kill Aldea. When you think about it, we were asking people to think differently. We were asking them to embrace concepts that they simply could not embrace. And more importantly, there are many evangelical churches in Tucson. It was very easy for them to just slip out the back door and go find a new church home where they felt comfortable and with which they were familiar. While Kevin's vision was supported by the leadership team and others, it came with a great cost. Can you imagine? Once again, I can't speak for Kevin, but as an outsider looking in, the amount of courage that it took to stand up to an entire congregation, let alone the Baptist General Conference, for a vision that he felt strongly about was incredibly inspiring and powerful. Kevin and Sylvia during this time, I think it's safe to say, felt very abandoned. They were abandoned by their congregation. They had many close friends. And more importantly, they even were abandoned by many of their family members. People that they loved, that they cared for, turned their backs on them. Not too many people could have stood up to this kind of rejection. They were true heroes. Their strength and determination to hold on to something that they truly believed in, despite the consequences, was incredibly inspiring. With Dr. Dave's assistance and Kevin's leadership and the support of the leadership team and the congregation that survived, Aldea slowly began to take shape. Because our numbers had dwindled so drastically, we could no longer support our large facility, so we sold it in 2009. For a period of time, we rented the small worship building on the property, and then we moved into an even smaller space at St. Demetrius Orthodox Church for several months. At that time, we were like 30 to 40 people, maybe closer to 20 to 30 people. It was very small. We had funds from the church to survive, and then we found this property here, and in July of 2013, 10 years ago, we moved into this facility that we now call home. So you're probably thinking, what further crisis could there possibly be at this point in time? Well, the moment that I chose as a crisis was when we determined that we could no longer be under the charter of the Baptist General Conference. Kevin and I had visited the General Conference in the mid-2000s to basically see if we had their support and to see if we could get financial assistance. We were denied outright any financial assistance. In 2014, we determined that we really could no longer be under their charter. That's kind of a big deal because under their charter, we had charitable status, and so we rely on donations, charitable donations, to survive. So in 2015, we started the application process for recognition of exemption under 501c3. That was no small task. It took several heroes to get that accomplished. We had Tibor Nagy, who was the chair of our leadership team at that time, Deborah Hanna, who was on our leadership team, Phil Thompson, who was our executive pastor, of course, Kevin and the leadership team, and eventually we were successful in getting a 501c3 designation as Aldea Spiritual Community. Now, I thought it would be important to read to you this narrative of who we described ourselves at that time, and to show you where we started. This would probably read a little bit differently if we were to write it today, but it illustrates where we started and the fluidity of Aldea. We have evolved, and undoubtedly we will continue to evolve. That's who we are, a fluid and evolving community. So I apologize for the length, but here we go. I'm going to come down here where I can read it better for you. Aldea is a progressive Christian church, and we recognize that there are many ways to be Christian. And there are all kinds of churches for all kinds of people. At Aldea, we affirm this truth. We also celebrate that we are progressive in our approach to faith. So the question is, what does it mean to be progressive? Here are a few things it means to us. We are passionate about living our lives in the way of Jesus, and we hold love as life's highest value. As progressive Christians, we affirm that how we live out our faith in daily life is more important than the specific beliefs we hold. We seek to live as Jesus lived. We find beauty in his way of life. Central to that way of life is love. Jesus once summarized his way using these words: love God with all your heart, love your neighbor as yourself, love God, love people, love period. We take the Bible seriously, but we don't always take it literally. Our reading of the Bible is most often characterized by a historical and metaphorical approach. We appreciate that the Bible tells the story of our tradition. It's the history of our faith. It was written by people struggling to make sense of God and spiritual matters. It reflects their thinking and evolution of that thinking from generation to generation. We also read the Bible metaphorically. Rather than taking the stories of Scripture as always factual and always literal, we appreciate the power of metaphor. From the opening words of Genesis to the final words of Revelation, we read Scripture seeking to find meaning for the present day. We are deeply rooted in the Christian faith, but we appreciate the wisdom of other traditions. Too often, faith communities make exclusive claims on God and spiritual truth. At Aldea, we make no such claims. We practice our faith with passion, but also with humility. We appreciate the wisdom of our tradition, but we also celebrate that other people and other traditions can speak into our lives. We believe that appreciating the wisdom of other faiths can actually enrich our own Christianity. Because of this approach, we look for opportunities to create dialogue with others. In this way, we seek to be evangelized rather than to be evangelizing others. Even within Aldea, we do not all believe exactly the same way. These eternal differences are also enriching.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to quickly let you know about an easy and free way that you can support Aldea. Did you know that between our YouTube and Apple Podcast channel, our online audience is often 2 to 3 times the size of our in-person audience? Not only do we value our online community, but we recognize how powerful it can be in spreading our message of love, period. So, how can you help? Like our videos, leave a comment, subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our podcast, leave a positive review. All of these things go a really long way in increasing our visibility and help to get our messages out into the world. So we thank you for your help. All right, let's get back to the message.
Treasure. Over time, Aldea grew. We had many other heroes who came to be at Aldea. We had Mark Archambault, who was a music leader, director, and also associate pastor for quite a while. We had Annie Hawkins, who was a music leader. Rob Curcio, for a period of time, he was an associate pastor. We had Phil Thompson, who was an executive pastor, and really the glue that held this place together for many years. Michelle Curcio, who was our children's director for many years. I wish I had time to name all the incredible volunteers and leadership team members through the years who devoted incredible time and resources to help Aldea succeed. There were many incredible and dedicated people. One thing that we stress at Aldea is that Aldea is about all of us. We are Aldea. It's up to us for Aldea to continue its journey. We are continually reinventing Aldea with our ideas, our visions, our passions. It's a united effort. Aldea is not meant to be a place where you come on Sunday morning and you're fed and then come back and are fed next week. It's a place for you to get involved. It's a place for you to make your spiritual home, your community. It's a place for you to do your part. As I said, Aldea did succeed. We grew. We had a very tight budget, but we became sustainable. We were the ambassador and contributor to many social justice ventures. We were a place where we facilitated spiritual growth and maturity. I wanted to show you this fun marketing piece that we put together around this period of time. Uh-oh.
Love doesn't leave the work of social justice to someone else.
It is not a guilt trip.
Love doesn't get hung up on rules and theology.
Love validates, no matter your orientation.
Love is fun.
It even has a beer once in a while.
Love is my religion.
My religion.
My religion.
This idea of love, its time has come. We invite you to be part of it at Aldea, where we love, period.
So that's was a fun thing to put together. And it really talked about who we were and really who we are. Aldea had to make many sacrifices to be sustainable. All of our staff were part-time. All leadership had full-time jobs. So as you can imagine, the time constraints on our staff was significant. Despite those time constraints, they did a great job. Aldea grew and we became sustainable. And then in 2017, the unthinkable happened. Kevin announced his retirement effective December 31, 2019. That's right, he gave us 2 years notice, and we needed all of those 2 years because those were very hard shoes to fill. Leadership team was tasked with the difficult job of finding a replacement. We put a lot of time and effort and thinking into it, and we still were struggling. So we went back and we asked one of our original heroes and founders of Aldea, Dr. Dave, to assist us in our search. Much to our surprise and delight, Dr. Dave expressed an interest in coming back on an interim basis as senior pastor at Aldea. He stepped into this role on January 1st, 2020. That's right, his timing could not have been worse. It was the beginning of a global pandemic. We ended up having to shut down in-person services for 2 years. We could just start this cycle all over again, all of the challenges that we went through at that time. Different visions began to emerge. There was the difficult decision of how and when to go back to in-person services. Serious consideration was even given to keeping Aldea online for their messaging. The congregation, however, was eager to return. Not like the situation at CCF, where people were able to just quietly go out the back door and find another evangelical church. There is no other Aldea. There was nowhere for anyone, for the congregation to go. Aldea wanted its community back. We knew that our time with Dr. Dave was limited, and after 2 years, he stepped down as senior leader. Actually, this is where we're at. Never mind. Okay. So once again, the leadership team was tasked with finding a senior leader. This is when we have another hero, Mary Rodenbow over here, who stepped in and agreed to be our administrator during a time when we had absolutely no staff. She helped us keep the lights on. She helped us keep the doors open. She helped us coordinate volunteers so that we could start gathering again on Sundays. After several months and countless hours, we have a happy ending to our search with the hiring of Jake Haber as our senior pastor. Aldea has been beyond blessed with the addition of Jake and his amazing partner, Olivia, into the Aldea family. They have folded themselves into our community, into our hearts, and we could not be happier. Jake is doing an amazing job and is still finding his way, and I have no doubt that there are going to be many exciting opportunities in the months and years ahead under Jake's leadership. In looking for a senior pastor, the leadership team made a decision that in order for Aldea to not only survive, but to thrive, we needed to hire a full-time pastor. It was risky. Our resources are finite, but we believed under the right leadership, Aldea could grow and thrive. It really is not an option. It was time to play ball or go home. There is no other Aldea. We knew that members fought for its survival, and we truly believed that we would fight for our sustainability. While I would like to say that we're now at status quo plus, we're not quite there. We need our income to equal our expenses. We have some wiggle room, but not much. I'm confident that we'll get there. We have new people coming every Sunday. Giving will increase, and we are certainly open to other suggestions on how to raise revenue. Any ideas are welcome. We're all ears, as long as it's legal and doesn't violate our charitable status. Come talk to us. I would be remiss in speaking of the leadership team not to mention Tibor Nagy. Tibor is our current chairperson. He was our chairperson during very difficult times. The retirement of Kevin, the hiring of a new senior leader, a global pandemic, hiring a new senior leader, hurting us all through some difficult decisions, emotions, and trials. I mention this and Tibor because his time on the leadership team is up at the end of this year. And while he's not here today, unfortunately, he'll be back. And when you see him, make sure you tell him thank you. And I'm sure before the end of the year, we'll have an opportunity to appreciate him. All right, we're now to the point of our discussion time. But before we go into this time, I have a very important announcement to make. I'm very excited about this announcement. The main hero in our story is Kevin Skinner. Kevin was the guiding light behind the creation of Aldea. I cannot say enough about his passion, his courage, and his vision in the formation of Aldea, and the sacrifices that he and Sylvia made for this sacred place. He has taken a much needed break from ministry, and while Sylvia has remained and even serves on our leadership team, Kevin has stayed away. And I believe mainly just to respect new leadership and allow new visions to emerge. Having said that, I'm excited to tell you that Kevin has agreed to speak with us next Sunday. So if you've never heard Kevin speak, you're in for a treat, and I'm sure you'll be disappointed if you don't join us.